Happy Valentine's, happy Valentine's, happy Valentine's Day. Flush that Valentine's Day. Yeah, shout out to 3 Stacks, Andre 3000, and shout out to all you lovers, and shout out to all you fighters out there, lovers and fighters alike. Greetings and welcome to another edition of This Day in Boxing History. I love boxing. This day in boxing history, y'all, Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1951, Sugar Ray Robinson, the late great, KOs, TKOs, the Raging Bull, Jake LaMotta in the 13th round in Chicago, and wins the world middleweight title for the first time. Now, he had just won, Sugar Ray Robinson, the Pennsylvania middleweight title, but it wasn't world recognized. This championship signified Sugar Ray Robinson being a two-time champion, a two-time world champion. All right, he won the world welterweight title prior in 1950. Then he vacated, and then he went up to middleweight. And this day in February 14th, y'all beloved Valentine's Day, he won the world, repeat, universal world middleweight title. And this is also called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Not the original one, but the boxing one, the second one, the second most famous St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Now, why is it named the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? Maybe because both these men were raw, highly skilled warriors, bloodlusting, blood-blasting pugilists. Maybe because St. Valentine or San Valentino has its origins with Italians, and Jake LaMotta is Italian. But the most important reason is probably because the fight was fought on Valentine's Day. Sugar Ray Robinson and the Bronx Bull, Jake LaMotta, fought 6 times, y'all, in their series. And they fought those 6 times in 2 years. Within 2 years. Now, ain't that something? This fight was their 6th and final fight between the two, and ended in KO, a stoppage, a mercy, a life rescue of good old Raging Bull. Sugar Ray Robinson ended the 6-fight series with this fight right here, and the series stands with 5 wins and 1 loss for Sugar Ray Robinson. The famous boxing writer and renowned historian, Burt Sugar, once wrote that being knocked out by Sugar Ray Robinson, quote, was more of an honor than a disgrace, end quote. Jake LaMotta was once quoted by saying, quote, I fought Sugar Ray so often, I almost got diabetes, end quote. Now, I'm going to try to make this thing quick and snappy, since LaMotta is one of my favorite boxers of all time. You know, I pick him when we fight middleweight on the game Fight Night Round Champion. He's in my top 50 easily, and I'll definitely have to do a profile on him later. By the way, I think Jake LaMotta is still alive, so y'all double check that, and if he is, man, y'all give him a shout out. But this fight itself was epic, y'all. Check it out. It's on YouTube. Both fighters vying for supremacy. LaMotta stalking Sugar Ray around the ring with that piston jab. Pop, pop, pop. They going into wild spurts. You know, LaMotta walking them down, hitting them hard to the body. Sugar Ray, them long looping hooks, them wild straights. Quick, snappy, wild barrage punches like the Tasmanian devil. But then, if you've seen the fight, rounds 10 through 13, man, Sugar Ray seems to just goes mad. Like he got like violent instincts just came over him. He goes into a wild fit, and he went to work on LaMotta. He was hitting him so hard to the body. If you've seen the fight, that whenever Sugar Ray would feint to the body or hit LaMotta to the body, especially in the later rounds, LaMotta would fold up. He would bend almost all the way over, trying to block those punches. His face was cringing. He was grimacing and everything. Sugar Ray used all his heart and beat LaMotta to a pulp, swinging wild, trying to knock the Raging Bull's head into the 3rd row. Now, the crowd reports of this fight say that blood actually did go outside the ring, onto people, etc. And if the ref didn't stop it, Sugar Ray was going to kill another man in the ring. He already killed one man in the ring, Jimmy Doyle. All right? Now, if you've seen it, Sugar Ray had LaMotta pasted up against the ropes, and it looked like he was beating a drunk man or beating a corpse. It looked like the punches were really holding LaMotta up, besides the ropes, of course. Anywho, I know it sounds like a tall tale, but go ahead, watch it for yourself. And also, what's that movie? The movie with Robert De Niro, the Raging Bull. It depicts this fight real well in that movie. Y'all check it out. Y'all know the clips from the movie. You never got me down, Ray. You couldn't knock me down, Ray. You never knocked me down. You couldn't get me down, Ray. Hell, if it wasn't for the ref, he was about to kill your ass in there, LaMotta. Now, since this is a historical video along with boxing, we're going to talk just a little bit about the original St. Valentine's Day Massacre. All right, it was a day of reckoning, a day of love, a day of... No, I'm playing. It was just a whole bunch of gangster, mobster hoopla. As they say, it's real in the field, it's real in the streets. And the original St. Valentine's Day Massacre happened in 1929 in Chicago, Illinois. It involved the murder of 7 mob associates of an Irish gang led by Bugs Moran. And this was, of course, during the whole, Elliot Ness, Untouchables, Prohibition era. All right, and then it evolved around an Irish gang led by Moran and the Southside Italian gang led by the formidable Al Capone. Like any other mob store, they had beef. They were battling to take control over organized crime, battling over turf. They was boosting each other's liquor shipments, all that good stuff, trying to take over each other's businesses. And the mob was real big in history, y'all, for fixing fights, paying fighters off, threatening fighters. And one of the more well-known mobsters and gangsters during the LaMotta Ray Robinson era who extorted from fighters, who threatened fighters and fixed fights was Frankie Carbo. Now, I got that directly from a primary source in a book called The Sweet Thunder by, I think, Haygood or Millgood, something like that. But it's about a 450-page, 460-page book, and I read the whole thing. Another big mobster gangster during that time that was real big and in the boxing racket was Jim Norris. He did the same mob-related stuff, control over boxing, and he even froze Sugar Ray Robinson out of fighting in the U.S. Hence, Sugar Ray Robinson leaving for Europe for that long while and having that long boxing tour in Europe. The Sweet Thunder, this book called Sweet Thunder, about Sugar Ray Robinson and the life and the times of that era, cites that Carbo's gang, Frankie Carbo's gang, was affiliated with henchmen. And of course, all gangs got henchmen. And they came to Sugar Ray on multiple occasions and tried to bribe him, tried to extort him, tried to threaten him, and tried to get him to throw fights. And the book cites itself, which I also believe, that he never ever gave in. He never threw any fights. Sugar Ray Robinson, if y'all know anything about him, he was known to demand most of the revenue from the fights. He was making big money for that time. And he was also known that if the money wasn't right or certain shit didn't go his way, he wouldn't show up. He wouldn't show up to the venue. Cats would get there, people wouldn't pay their tickets, and Sugar Ray wouldn't show up. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson, he had to get some muscle, of course. He didn't really want to, but his manager, George Gainford, got him some muscle. Now, George Gainford is the legendary trainer of Sugar Ray Robinson and a few other, in and out prize fighters during that time. He's either from Jamaica or he's from one of the islands, one of the Caribbean islands, Bahamas or something. But George Gainford Smith, y'all, that's the legendary trainer for Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson, asked him, what, man, we're going to leave the gangster mobs and stuff alone. But Gainford insisted, and he hired for them the legendary gangster Bumpy Johnson, who was the underworld king at that time in Harlem. Now, Bumpy Johnson was the biggest gangster of the time, and a few movies were made about him. But he's the one, if you ever seen American Gangster, he passed the torch to Frank Lucas. Larry Fishburne played Bumpy Johnson in that movie, The Hoodlum. Now, coming straight out of the book Sweet Thunder again, There's a story about an Italian mob, Italian gangsters were planning to ambush Sugar Ray Robinson and his manager George Gainford, to try to get them to throw the fight or, send a message. But when they were sneaking up to ambush him, they saw, or what they thought was Bumpy Johnson or a figure similar to him, and it looked like they had something in their hand. So they quickly aborted mission, ran off, blah, blah, blah. They never got Sugar Ray to throw a fight. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson was also called the Prince of Harlem, or the quote-unquote Harlem Dandy. Now, I don't know what dandy meant back then, but it kind of has a bad connotation nowadays. I guess, he had the pink Cadillac, he had the honeys, he had the restaurants, and he was the fighting crown, he was the fighting champ, I don't know if it still exists to this day, but there used to be a Sugar Ray Robinson Day in Harlem during his heyday. But we're going to do another profile we're going to do one on Sugar Ray, Jake LaMotta, and a few other great fighters that I really admire. Next great thing that happened on St. Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1965, fabulous Frankie Lyles was born. Now, the fabulous Frankie Lyles, you might not heard him whenever or seen him or anything, but he had a short little stint at middleweight and super middleweight in the 80s and 90s. And his record stands as 32 wins, 19 by KO, 3 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, fabulous Frankie Lyles won a bronze medal at the 1987 Pan Am Games. He had an awesome amateur career, and his amateur career record was 285 with 14 losses. In 1992, he won the NABF title against Murkay Sosa. Also, y'all check out Beats' new video. He did a video on the NABF and the NABO. He did a video on those titles. I think they stand for the National American Boxing Federation and National American Boxing Organization. I'm not sure, but check it out. Now, earlier that year, in 1992, Frankie Lyles fought for the USBA super middleweight title against a 28-0 undefeated Tim Liles. Now, the title sounds like an alphabet belt. I didn't research it. And of course, it's in one of those added weight classes, super middleweight. But we'll get into that later. Now, in 1994, Frankie Lyles beat Steve Little, and he won the WBA super middleweight title. And he defended it 7 times over 4, 5, 6 years of the time that he had the belt. And his notable wins were over Michael Nunn, the great Michael Nunn, Segundo Mercado, and he got his rematch with Tim Liles, who was 27-1 at the time, and I think he KO'd him. So he got his rematch and whooped down Tim Liles. Now, this is an important note about Frankie Lyles. He tried to get a fight with his arch nemesis, y'all, his rival. It was like Professor X Magneto, Batman versus the Joker, Alabama Auburn. His arch nemesis was Roy Jones Jr. And I know y'all know how maybe it wasn't Roy Jones' fault, but his management team carefully picked certain fights for him, during his career. Granted, he did fight the best. Roy Jones did fight Biop and James Toney and other fighters, Tulani Malinga, but he did not fight Frankie Lyles. Frankie Lyles tried for a large part of his career to get a fight with Roy Jones. And why is this? Because in the amateurs, them dudes used to go at it, like Batman and Joker used to do. In 1998, Frankie Lyles was the runner-up for the Olympic team at light middleweight. Roy Jones beat him twice in the Olympic trials. Now dig this. A year prior to that, in 1987, Frankie Lyles beat Roy Jones Jr. twice in the amateurs. All right, and in one of those fights, Frankie Lyles gave Roy Jones 2 standing 8 counts. So obviously, styles make fights, and there's always somebody out there that just has your number. Like Pac-Man Marquez. There's always somebody out there who can get you. Like Sugar Shane Mosley versus Vernon Forrest. There's always somebody out there that got your number, and that's why we love to see those fights, and that's why they make great fights. But for whatever reason, Roy Jones Jr. versus Frankie Lyles never came to fruition. Now, Frankie Lyles, he lost his title in 1999 to Byron Mitchell. He fought one more time after that fight for the WBO, NABO light heavyweight title in 2002. I take that back. I don't think he fought one. He might have fought a few more times. But anyway, his last bout was in 2002 for the light heavyweight title for the WBO, NABO. He got dusted off, he got KO'd, and he finally retired that same year. Now, the interesting things about Frankie Lyles was he wasn't just, boxing oriented. He trained some of K1 kickboxing most notable fighters, such as the legendary Mori Akio, better known as Musashi, y'all. The great Musashi. And he also trained the all-around superstar Bob Sapp. I know y'all seen Bob Sapp everywhere, y'all. Pro football, movies, MMA. Y'all seen Bob Sapp everywhere. Now, this is one thing I didn't know that I just saw a few days back. For most of Frankie Lyles' career, his trainer was Freddie Roach. I didn't know Freddie Roach, had more fighters than, just Pacquiao and Conor. Of course he does at his gym, but I know he had, more fighters that were good and had titles besides Pacquiao. So Freddie Roach was his trainer for most of the year. For most of his career. Now, last but not least, in Syracuse, Frankie Lyles was inducted to the Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame. Now, he didn't go to Syracuse University, but he's from Syracuse, and they did him a solid by inducting him there because the man had a good career. Next, on this day in boxing history, February 14th, Happy Valentine's Day, y'all, is the birth of Freddie Norwood. He was born in 1970. Freddie Norwood, also known as a.k.a. Lil Hagler. Now, I guess they call him this because he was bald-headed and he had a southpaw stance. Maybe that's where the comparison comes from. And I remember seeing a few of his fights on undercards, with De La Hoya and Pacquiao, blah, blah, blah. But Freddie Norwood's record stands as 43 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw. And out of those 43 wins, he won 23 by KO. Now, Freddie Norwood was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and he fought in the lightweight division most of his career. He defeated Agapito Sanchez. That name sounds familiar. I think that dude also fought Pacquiao. But he defeated Agapito Sanchez to win the vacant IBA Continental Featherweight title. Another one of these belts, IBA didn't do enough research on that. Then later on, he won another title, or a more recognized title, the WBA featherweight title in 1998 against Antonio Cermeño. 3 fights afterwards, he was stripped of the title for missing weight against Koji Matsumoto. And I'm glad that they stripped him of his title. And we need more stringent rules of stripping these belts or just getting rid of them, altogether. If these belts, all these new belts are so easy to attain and pay for, then hell, they should be easy to get rid of too. Burn up, pawn, whatever. I'm sure they're worth some money at pawn shops. But that's another video. I'm going to do a video on that later. Now, back on Norwood. 3 fights later, after he was stripped of the title for missing weight against Matsumoto, he wins the title again, the WBA featherweight title against Cermeño again, Antonio Cermeño. Now, among his notable fights and title defenses, he beat future featherweight title holder Takashi Koshimoto. He beat another future title featherweight champ for the who was a WBO featherweight champ, by the way, Julio Pablo Chacon. And he beat the legendary Mexican boxer who's still fighting, Juan Manuel Marquez, by 12-round decision, unanimous decision. And Marquez, he won plenty of titles, WBA, IBF, and Marquez is just that dude. He got that poison for Pacquiao. Now, after Freddie Norwood lost his title to Smoke Gaynor, he retired from boxing. Then he came back 6 years later. You know, can't end your career out on a loss. You know what I'm saying? These boxers, here they come again. But his final fight was against the famous fighter from Ghana, Ray Nar. And he lost a 10-round unanimous decision to Ray Nar. And by the way, Ray Nar is still fighting, and Ghana also has a rich history in boxing. You know, you got fighters like Azuma Nelson, Ike Corte, let's see, Claudi's from Ghana. Is Iran Barkley? Well, I'm not sure about that, but Ghana has a rich history of boxers, all right, and good boxing champions. Now, in closing, happy Valentine's, y'all. Happy Valentine's Day. Flush that Valentine. I love that song by Andre. But in doing this video, not only am I giving a shout out to the boxers, but I'm giving a shout out to this day, giving a shout out to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, one of the greatest displays of blood-letting, head whooping in boxing history. And don't let this day be the only day you do something special for your loved one. Don't let this day be the only day you make love. You know, and if you must massacre something, let it be, you know. But in the name of love, we love boxing.